According to KRS-One, there are a few different definitions of hip-hop, and they're all spelled differently. Today we're going to focus on two. The first definition is hip-hop spelled capital H, lowercase ip, space capital H, lowercase op. This refers to the official hip-hop culture, which was designated by the UN in 2001. Culture can be defined as the customary beliefs, social forms, and traits of a religious, racial, or social group, according to Merriam-Webster. Normally, when people think about hip-hop, they think about rap music, but rap music is only one of many, many products of hip-hop culture. The second definition is hip-hop spelled capital H, lowercase ip, hop, all smushed together. This refers to hip-hop as a collective consciousness, a movement aware of itself, a tool for philosophy and for education. The first part of the Masterclass touches on education as a form of training. KRS-One says that at the elementary level, school is focused on teaching us how to respond to authority. But KRS-One makes a distinction between education and intelligence. He says education told him that he was an African American, a black man. But when he applied his intelligence, which is asking the right questions, getting the right answers, and knowing when to ask questions at all, he realized, I'm not even black. I'm closer to brown, if anything. When he was a black man, he experienced black man situations, quote unquote. Like the cops. I can't get a job. Caps won't stop for me. I hate the school system. Where's my father? But when he became hip-hop, his life changed. In the 1970s, we got something better than education. We got hip-hop. This is where hip-hop comes in. And even though parents of the older generations were used to conforming, and they doubted this new movement, we realized that we could sidestep the entire mainstream process. And it was over from there. Hip-hop comes from this argument, he says, this question of, are we going to be a part of the system or not? This controversy between the term of Negro versus colored people. The struggle of poor African Americans versus elite African Americans. The conversation of assimilation versus separatism. He talks about Malcolm X's parents' legacy, how they were Garveyites, and how even Garvey had his own dissenters. How W.E.B. Du Bois and the NAACP rejected his ideas. He talks about Martin Luther King being pro-integration, insisting on consistency with the Constitution and equality. An interesting point about Martin Luther King and his March on Washington, KRS-One says that during that speech, he wasn't speaking to the people of 1963. He was speaking to the younger generation, to Afrika Bambaataa and Kool Herc's generation. Fast forward to the birth of hip-hop. August 11th, 1973 was the first time that Kool Herc brought his sound system out onto the sidewalk, located outside of 1530 Sedgwick Avenue, for his little sister Cindy's birthday party. And every week after that, he was playing music. He would take a James Brown song and replay the break over and over again on two different sound systems, because apparently this was before a mixer, and he would create a new song. And then, of course, you have the rise of the MC, of the break dancer, of the graffiti artist, and hip-hop really begins to evolve. The birth of hip-hop is one of the most profound and spiritually significant events that I can think of. The way that KRS-One talks about graffiti writers and how the way that they write is the calligraphy of our culture just puts it into perspective that hip-hop is so much more than rap music. Not only is hip-hop a culture, a way of life, but it's also a way of knowing. It's a philosophical lens. This brings us to the central theme of today's lecture, which is the idea of hip-hop reality. KRS-One believes that whatever the brain does not have a word for, it overlooks. This is a concept that I might have come across in philosophy classes and when studying communication and social sciences. It reminds me of nominalism, of social constructivism, of the concept of symbolic interactionism. These are all very Western terms. But I like calling it hip-hop reality. KRS-One says that new words can create new realities. If a plumber walks into a room, he's going to look at that room and think of the plumbing, think about the pipes behind the walls. An electrician will walk into that room and also kind of see through the walls, but he's not thinking of plumbing, he's thinking about electricity. A painter will walk into a room, he's not even thinking about what's behind the walls. He's thinking about what would look great on the walls, what would go good with the couches and the tables. They each bring their own language. A painter might talk about, I don't know, a monochromatic color scheme. A plumber might talk about, I don't know, insert plumbing term. An electrician might talk about insert electrician's terminology. But our words and the language that we use and the terminology that we use can affect how we think and how we relate to these realities. The same goes for cultures, Italian, Jamaican, African, whether you're a doctor, a lawyer, an architect. Hip-hop. If you are hip-hop, you're going to view the world through a specific lens. How you walk into a room and how you observe and perceive that room is going to be influenced by your culture, by your environment, and of course by your language. Everyone else, this is KRS-One's words legit, everyone else is saying gaga goo goo. He says breaking, MCing, graffiti, and DJing. They're like, but wait a minute, you just dropped out of school. He's like, man, I don't even know what school is. Breaking, MCing, graffiti, and DJing. They're like, but you don't even have a job. Man, I don't know what the word job means. Breaking, MCing, graffiti, and DJ. His parents doubted him. All their parents of the hip-hop generation doubted them. But in 1973, they called themselves hip-hop. KRS-One asks us and wants us to ask ourselves, what do we call ourselves? The first thing you got to get away from is the language and the ways of knowing and seeing the world that were given to you by the colonizer, like Malcolm X or a rapper. We need to define our own realities, define our own identities for ourselves. That is hip-hop.